Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name's Em, and today we are going to be doing my August wrap-up. So we have a lot going on around this house today. Our back fence is being repaired, the kids are playing video games. Hopefully there won't be too much extraneous noise, but you know, it just is what it is. We're gonna do our best, and it just is what it is. So moving forward, we'll just jump right in. I read 18 books in August, and 10 of those books were by BIPOC authors, which I'm thrilled about. That's definitely my highest percentage for a month so far, and like that's always my goal, is to have it at least be 50%, and I fall short so many times, so I'm really thrilled with that number. 67% of what I read was in physical format. 28% of what I read was largely audio, though if you've been around for a while, you'll know I am a big hybrid reader, so I will most often combine some component of physical and audio. And then the remaining percent was ebook, but I'm not a big ebook reader, so that's always going to be like the smallest percentage of my reading for the month. And then my average rating was a 3.66 because I definitely had a few 2 stars in August, sad to say. So we're gonna jump in with my most disappointing read of the month, and we actually got this right at the beginning. It is Tender is the Flesh by Agustina Bazterrica. I can't remember what the sound is on that E, but this is a book in translation, and this is a horror novel that's set a little bit in the future where humans are no longer able to consume animal meat of any kind, and all animals basically have been wiped out from the earth because of this like deadly virus that suddenly was taking out humans, and society has legalized cannibalism basically and made cannibalism mainstream. And I was really interested in the setup of this book, but this actually ended up not being about the cognitive dissonance of eating humans, which I was really interested in that idea and that project, and it ended up just being about a guy being really creepy towards women basically, and I hated that. Hated it. I gave this 2 stars, and it feels so weird to say I would have liked this more if it had focused more on the cannibalism, but that was the project I was really interested in, and in how the humans that are raised to be consumed, like the language used for them, and how this connects to our consumption of meat and the meat industry in our, you know, real world and in 2024, but that just wasn't what it was. Not what I feel like the book is marketed as. But I found the way this man went through the world to be really gross and like, oh boo-hoo, I feel so sad for me kind of thing, and I just really disliked it. So unfortunately not a hit, and I will be unhauling this. So next we're gonna do my biggest surprise, and my biggest surprise was The Liar's Crown by Abigail Owen. This is YA, older YA, or maybe even new adult romantasy, and this is about, oh no, I've forgotten her name already, Marin. This is about Marin, who is the second twin of 2 sisters, and in this kingdom, the second sister is raised to be the body double for the older twin, and so Marin has been raised to be a perfect imitation of her sister to protect her that when she inherits the throne. And on the eve of her sister's coronation, Marin is suspicious that something is going to happen to her twin, and so she purposefully disguises herself and then is abducted in her sister's stead. And I really loved this. I haven't read a ton of romantasy, so I know there are some tropes in here that are pretty common in this subgenre, but since I don't read it very often or hardly ever, I in the moment didn't realize that they were common tropes. So I had just such a good time. I really loved Marin as a main character. She's really feisty, she's really fun. I think she's very brass and impulsive in ways that I really loved. And she's kidnapped by this man named Revan, who is a shadow wraith. And I don't know, it's a high adventure. I really loved the romance. I really loved the writing. I really loved the world building. I gave this like 4.5 stars. I just had such a fun time with it. I primarily listened to it on audio, and I really loved the narrator. I thought she did a phenomenal job. And I'm really excited to jump into book 2, hopefully in September, and be able to complete this duology. But I had such low expectations for this because I had DNF'd a book already this month with, you know, that twin dynamic of, well, there's one sister who's meant to be the princess, and there's one sister who's meant to sacrifice herself for the other. And I just, because I DNF'd that book and I knew that that was the setup for this, I had the lowest of expectations. I was fully expecting to DNF this, so it was such a delight to enjoy it as much as I did. All right, I'm going to save my favorite book for the very end. So now these are in no particular order. I also read Pink Slime by Fernanda Trias. This is also a book in translation. And this is a novella that's set in the future, and there is this pink algae bloom, pink slime virus that is brought on by environmental crisis, and it basically makes people's skin slough off their body. Yeah, so highly gross. And this is really just about like this one woman and the mundanity of living in this situation, like her mundane day-to-day life. I thought because of the title and the cover, I thought this would be a little bit more fun. And instead it's more just like weird lit fic, which is not my favorite. This got really sad and really depressing. I ended up having to take a break just because it was so sad and it was starting to affect my mood. And so I think if you like weird lit fic, if you like books with unnamed female protagonists, if you like books about like the mundanity of living in crisis, and you are in the mood for like a pandemic book, like, then I wouldn't not recommend this, but I just think this is going to have a very specific type of reader, and that reader is unfortunately not me. Continuing in the weird lit fic vein, I read Open Throat by Henry Hoke. This is another little novella that is from the point of view of a queer mountain lion living in a park underneath the Hollywood sign. And I found the first part of it really interesting, where you're getting the mountain lion's perspective as it watches hikers and people come through the area. But then in the latter half, I don't think this is considered a spoiler because it's on the description, but a fire occurs in the park and it forces the mountain lion into the neighborhood surrounding the park. And that part got weird in a way that I did not enjoy. So again, if you like weird lit fic, like, I would not recommend this. But again, I just don't think I was quite the right reader for this book. But this one I am glad I read because I was interested in it and I thought the concept was really cool. And I would definitely read more from this author just because I think his brain is really cool. And like his thought process of how he like wrote things out. Like, I thought that was very interesting. So I would definitely read more from him. I did make more progress in Witch Hat Atelier this month. I read volume 10, and this was definitely one of the heaviest volumes that I've read from this series, and also probably the one that I enjoyed the most. There is a content warning in here for sexual assault, and there is also some sad things that happen to other characters outside of that. There's just a lot of really heavy stuff. Witch Hat Atelier as a series is about a girl named Coco who discovers she has the ability to do magic, and she goes to train to be a witch with these 3 other apprentices, and this has really lovely found family aspects. And this series really runs the gamut between being really cozy and then also being dark. And each volume kind of alternates a little bit. I do find that I love the darker volumes a little bit more than the cozy volumes because I think what the author has to say is really, like, I think the author handles the heavier content very well, And I just find the characters so lovable, and like even the heavier volumes still feel so comforting to me. I can't remember if I rated it on Storygraph. I think I need to go back and do that, but I think I would give this a 4.5 just because I really loved all the things that were revealed, the way topics were handled, and I'm really interested to, I have like 2 more volumes before I'm caught up, and I'm really interested to see where it goes. I also continued my Lady Sherlock reread. I read Murder on Cold Street, which is book number 5 and is arguably my least favorite of the volumes. In this one, Inspector Treadles is framed for murder and Charlotte embarks on trying to prove his innocence. And I just don't like Inspector Treadles. He is so misogynistic in the first 4 books, in the way that he treats Charlotte, in the way that he treats his wife. And this is the book where Sherry Thomas is very much trying to redeem him, and I'm just not here for it. I am not here for an Inspector Treadles redemption arc. It's just not what I'm looking for. But as always, I love Charlotte. I love the rest of the supporting cast of characters. I'm just not interested in the mystery in this one, and I'm not interested in that redemption arc for that character. So it's definitely my least favorite, but still like a solid 4 stars, maybe. And then at the end of the month, I read Miss Moriarty, I presume, which is book 6. And this one I gave 5 stars. I love this one so much. We really Charlotte in this one really comes toe to toe with Moriarty and with the organization that he's in charge of. And Moriarty hires Charlotte to go to the community that his adult daughter has been living in. And there's just so many layers to this mystery. The ending of this is so action-packed, like it almost feels like a thriller because so many things are happening. And I really love the way Ash and Charlotte's romance in this is expanded upon, and there's just a lovely playfulness to their relationship that there hasn't been in previous books, and you can really watch them grow more comfortable with each other and with what the other one is capable of bringing to their relationship. And I just found that so lovely every time. I just absolutely love it. And this isn't a favorite of the series, like even though it's still 5 stars, this isn't my number 1 favorite, but I really like this one. And as always, I own all these physically, but I am primarily listening to them on audio because Kate Redding is such a good narrator for this series. Let's see, we got 2 more that I was kind of disappointed in, so we'll do these together. I read When Among Crows by Veronica Roth. This is my first Veronica Roth. I never got into the Divergent series, but this is adult novella by Roth, and I was actually gifted the audio from Macmillan, which was very kind of them, and I ended up not loving the audiobook, even though there's multiple narrators and the production quality is so well done, but my brain bounced off the audio pretty hard. There was something about the writing of this novella that didn't translate into oral storytelling very well for me, and I ended up reading a lot of this physically just because I was only really able to retain what I was reading if I was reading it physically. But this is set in Chicago, present day, and it's based on Slavic folklore, and it reminded me a lot of Even Though I Knew the End by C.L. Polk, kind of like in tone and just the writing style, but I definitely prefer Even Though I Knew the End to this. It was very much a mid-book, so I don't have a lot of thoughts on it. Another book I don't have a lot of thoughts on, we're going to talk about this. I don't have my physical copy because my husband's reading it, but I finally finished The 3-Body Problem by Cixin Liu, and it was fine. It felt very pretentious, very much like an ideas book, and I think I've said before, I need both character and plot. Like, if I love the characters but nothing's happening, it's not a win for me. And if the plot is really interesting but I don't care about the characters, like, that's not a win for me either. And this didn't have plot or characters that I liked. So this was very much an idea book. The characters were very wooden. The dialogue felt very stilted, and I don't have a lot to say about it because I just wasn't very impressed by it, but I am interested in watching the Netflix adaptation to see if that is a better way of telling the story for me than this book is. And then the other disappointment, the last one I think, is Night of the Mannequins by Stephen Graham Jones. This is pitched as these teenagers who go to play a prank on their friend with using a mannequin that they found in the woods, and the mannequin comes to life and starts killing people. And that is not what it actually is. And I'm not going to say what it is because I think that's a big spoiler, but I did not, I mean, as always, Stephen Graham Jones's writing style really works for me. So like this was easy to read and I really love his writing style, but I hated the justification for the actions in this book. I thought it was really flimsy. I just disliked the motivations and the main character so much that I think I gave this 2 stars as well. I did not like the Stephen Graham Jones. Like out of all of his slashers, this is definitely my least favorite. And it makes me nervous to read more of his novellas or to go back and read more of his older stuff. All right, I did read a nonfiction this month. I read It's Not Hysteria, Everything You Need to Know About Your Reproductive Health But Were Never Told by Dr. Karen Tang. This was another audiobook that I received from Macmillan, so thank you, Macmillan. And this is a great resource to have for anybody with a uterus who ever has to go to the doctor about problems that they're having with their uterus, basically. This covers a ton of different topics. And while I would not say this book should be used for diagnostic purposes, I think if you are going to the doctor to talk about possible endometriosis or ovarian cysts or sexual dysfunction or perimenopause or menopause or infertility or anything that has to do with the reproductive organs, I think this is a good book to read, even if it's just the chapter you're going to talk to your doctor about, to have a list of questions and concerns to use as a starting off point for a conversation so that you even know what things to ask. Because a lot of the times, like in the past when I've gone to the doctor for certain issues, like I'm not even sure what questions to ask to really get the action plan to be able to handle it. So I think this is a good book to have for those purposes. I also think Dr. Tang is really encouraging in that you should have a positive experience at the doctor. And if your doctor is not willing to listen to your concerns or to take you seriously, then you should fire that doctor and find another one, because you are the person in charge of your health. And if a doctor is not willing to help you in a way that is safe and sustainable, then you are within your rights to go find another one. So I really loved that empowerment from Dr. Tang. And I would recommend like anybody who has a uterus to check out parts of this book. I think Dr. Tang also does a really good job of using inclusive language and recognizing that not everybody who has a uterus is a woman. I continued in another series as well. I was doing pretty good job with the series this month. I read book 4 in the Kingdoms and Empires series. This is The Astonishing Chronicles of Oscar from Elsewhere by Jacqueline Moriarty. This is a middle grade series. This is fantasy. It's very whimsical. It's very ridiculous in like the best possible way. I have a really fun time with this series. And I think if you like whimsical, sometimes ridiculous, tongue-in-cheek adventure fantasy middle grade, like definitely check out this series. It starts with The Extremely Inconvenient Adventures of Bronte Metalstone. That's where you start. And then this is book 4, and it's a good time. And now I'm all caught up, which is excellent. And no, I'm not going to tell you what that one's about because it would take too long. There's too much has happened in the rest of the series to really make it easy to understand. I also finally read What the River Knows by Isabel Ibanez. I've been trying to read this since it came out last year. And this is YA historical fantasy about Inez, who is from Argentina, and her parents are on a trip to Cairo and are assumed dead, and so Inez goes to Cairo to discover what happened to her parents. This one was kind of hit or miss for me. There are parts I liked, there are parts I didn't like. I found it very predictable in certain places. The ending does leave you on a big cliffhanger, so I will definitely be reading book 2, but this is not like a series that I feel the need to own in any way, shape, or form. And I had a good time. Not a great time, but I had a good time. There is a romance in here. I don't know that I totally bought the romance, but it was fun. I basically just pictured Evie and Rick from The Mummy the whole time I was reading it, and that was a good time. I also, another book I've been trying to read since it came out, I finally read Vampires of El Norte by Isabel Cañas. This is another historical fiction. This is adult. I think this is technically classified as horror. However, I would say it is a romance first and it is horror second. Maybe. Like, barely. I don't know that I would say this is horror. I think this is a romance. Anyways, this is about Nena and Nestor. And Nena is the daughter of a wealthy rancher in South Texas, northern Mexico. I don't know. The border situation is very fluid at this time in history for where Texas ends and Mexico starts. And Nestor is a boy who works on the ranch, and they are best friends as children. And then one night, Nena is attacked by this monster and dies. And Nestor, in his grief, runs away from the ranch. And then you skip ahead 9 years later, and circumstances call Nestor back to the ranch, where he discovers that Nena is actually very much alive. And yeah, like I said, this didn't really have the horror elements that I was hoping for. I really wanted more from the vampire component, though I found Isabel Cañas' author note to be very interesting. So I almost recommend maybe reading the note first so you have context before diving into this book. But I thought the writing was really beautiful. I did really love the romance. I just wish there had been more horror. But I am 100% going to go back and read The Hacienda, and I will read whatever her next book is, because I thought the writing in this was so beautiful and the romance was so good. But let me be clear, Nestor can do better. And it is unusual for me to say that in a romance novel. Usually I think the heroine can do better. But in this one, I didn't like Nena. I don't think I don't think she deserved Nestor. I think Nestor deserved somebody who took care of him as well as he took care of Nena. That's all I'm gonna say. All right, now we have my top 3 books of the month, maybe? We're gonna start with one that I'm kind of on the fence about. I read You Again by Kate Goldbeck. This was out of my TBR jar for this month. I had this arc for like a year. And this is a contemporary romance. It's a When Harry Met Sally retelling. I did recently rewatch When Harry Met Sally, like before I started this book, and it is a very good retelling of that movie, like 100%. Okay, here's the thing. I loved the writing. I loved the story structure. I loved how Kate Goldbeck wove the story together. The problem is I don't think I liked either of our main characters. Like, this is very odd. This is also a Raylo fanfic, and the male, like, these characters are very much written to resemble Adam Driver and what's her name? Daisy Ridley? Is that her name? Anyways, like, obviously, and I think you can tell from the cover, like, obviously these two people are supposed to resemble those actors. And then on top of that, I just didn't like either of their personalities very much. But but I definitely bought the romance, even though I didn't really like them. Which is weird. It's weird to be like, I liked the writing, I liked everything about this book. I just don't know that I really liked the main characters very much. Which is weird. Because I also gave this kind of a high rating. I gave this like a 4.25. I genuinely, like, when I was picking this up, I just wanted to read it the whole time. I was super into it when I was reading it. But I just don't think I liked either of our main characters. I don't know. It's a weird dichotomy. But yeah, it's a very fall book. I think, like, it'd be perfect to read, I think, in this time of year. And I like that the When Harry Met Sally dynamic was switched. I put it down. I thought I was done talking about it. Apparently not. So I really liked that Josh is very much Meg Ryan's character from the movie, and Ari is very much Billy Crystal's character from When You've Got Mail. No, When Harry Met Sally. Anyways, so I liked that. I liked that personality swap. Another surprise, this could have been the biggest surprise of the month for me as well. I read Night Shift by Annie Crown. I loved this. I read it in like 2 sittings, which I never do. I read it so fast. This is new adult romance on a college campus, and Vincent is like the basketball star, and Kendall is like the nerdy, bookish character, if you are a similar age to me and grew up watching One Tree Hill, this is Nathan and Haley vibes. 110%. That is why I picked up the book, and it did not disappoint. I had a great time. It was so fun. Is it well written? I don't know. I just had a good time. I was 100% here for the vibes, and the vibes were good, and I had fun, and I really liked it, and I don't know what else to tell you. And then I guess this is my favorite book of the month. Am I going to say that with 100% confidence? I don't know. But it's The Spell Shop by Sarah Beth Durst. And this is, it says it tries to convince you it's a romance. I don't think it's a romance. I mean, there is a romance, but this is definitely cozy fantasy. The romance is very much a secondary. So if you're looking for like a romantasy, I don't think this is a romantasy. I think this is fantasy with a romance. But this is about Keela, who is a librarian, and there at the beginning of the book there is a revolution happening in her kingdom, and the library that she works at is being burned. And so she and her bestie Kaz, who is a sentient spider plant and the best character in the whole book, I will die on that hill, they rescue as many books as they can and escape barely with their lives and run away to the island that Keela grew up on but hasn't lived on for years and years and years. And this is really about community and friendship and building relationships and finding your home and finding your family. And I love those themes so much. Kaz, like every line Kaz has is brilliant. I really loved the characters in this book too. Like, not even the characters, but like the creatures. Like, this is a fantasy book that really leans into the diversity of creatures in fantasy. Like, there's mermaids, there's seahorses, like not like seahorses, but like mer horses, I guess. There's like Keela herself has like blue skin and blue hair and magenta freckles, and there's just there's a centaur, there are like antlered humanoid type creatures. There's just, I would say nobody in this book is actually human, and if they appear human, there's something about them that is just slightly fantastical. And it was so lovely. I really loved the writing. I thought the audiobook was a really fun experience. I read this from the library and halfway through ordered a copy from my indie bookstore because I knew I would want it on my shelves, because eventually I'm going to want to reread this. And it was so absolutely divine. I had such a good time reading this. So that is it. That's all 18 books that I read. This definitely felt like a slower reading month for me, which makes sense. It's kind of, the last push of summer, and there was a lot of back to school stuff. My youngest birthday is in August, and just that scramble of balancing work and the kids being home and trying to do all the summer fun activities and also trying to prep to go back to school. There's just a lot of stuff going on. So I definitely felt like that was reflected in my reading. If you've made it to the end of this video, I would love to hear what you read this month. If you have any thoughts or feelings about what I read this month, I would love to hear it. And if you would like to leave an emoji to let me know that you're here, let's do some sort of plant emoji for Kaz, and like if you liked it, subscribe if you want to, and I will talk to you all in the next one. Bye!